So as the title of this video states, I'm pretty simple-minded, and there's like a specific meaning to that I'll get into. But essentially, so I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and I came to a realization. Now, it's not a new realization, it's something that I've like known, and I've even vocalized it to myself before, but for some reason it just kind of hit differently yesterday, right? And so I'm kind of simple-minded. I can only really focus on one thing at a time, and I very much exist within the present moment. Anything that's outside of the present kind of focus/moment, I just kind of forget about, right? Anything that's out of sight is also out of mind. This also means that whenever I'm forced to continuously think about anything, like if I have an upcoming deadline, or ideas in my head I haven't written down, or if I feel like or if I feel like I'm not progressing on my goals, right? I will start to feel overwhelmed. I really don't like being pulled out of the present moment like that. And I don't like having that kind of stuff on my mind, right? And so what that means is I'll just kind of ignore things. Like I'll just kind of ignore things without even realizing, right? And so when I say all this, when I say that I'm kind of like simple-minded, what I'm really referring to is, and I'm kind of going off of this for a sec, because I don't think the writing's all that good. What I'm really referring to is essentially this idea that I don't like having that many thoughts in my head. I get very stressed out when I have a lot of things to worry about, or even a couple of things to worry about. I get really stressed out when there's anything to worry about, or when I'm kind of like being forced to stay in my head longer than kind of in the world around me, in a sense, right? And so, and that's maybe not the best way of putting it, but I think it gets the point across. And so the thing here is it's kind of like a trade-off, because as I was talking to this friend yesterday, she was telling me, she was like, wow, like, that sounds great. She was like, that sounds like you're so lucky, right? Like that sounds awesome, because I'm not worried about things, right? Like I genuinely, like when I went to dinner with this friend, and as we were talking, like the only thing that existed within my entire universe was the food that we were eating and the person I was talking to, her, right? That's it. That's all there was, right? I'm not worried about anything. I'm not stressed about anything. I'm totally within the present moment. Nothing else is on my mind. And that is generally how I exist most of the time. Like right now, I might have all these things I have to do. I actually do have all these things I need to do. But the only thing that's on my mind is speaking to the little camera, right? Is just looking right into the little circle on my phone and talking. This is all that's on my mind right now. Nothing else exists. And that's really the way I am. I'm very one-track minded in that sense, right? And this is good in some ways, right? Just like my friend was saying, right? I live relatively nicely. I don't have a lot of things worrying me all the time, right? I just don't really think about anything. I'm just in the moment. The drawback though is that my problems don't disappear, right? And it doesn't matter if I'm not thinking about things, if I'm not worrying about things, my problems remain, my responsibilities remain. The issue is I'm not looking at them. I'm not focusing on them, right? They're out of sight. They're out of mind. That doesn't make them disappear. They often get worse, right? And so this is a big problem with me, where I'll just kind of like let things continue to simmer, and I will continue to let problems just kind of grow within themselves until the point where then I have to do something about it, right? And in that moment, I then feel overwhelmed, I feel stressed, right? But I have to take care of it, right? And so I'll wait until making any decisions. I'll wait until, I actually address an issue, because it's just not on my mind. And that's not great. And so this is like, so let me see, let me find out where I was again. So, right, so there's that trade-off, right? So it's, as my friend would say, it's nice in some ways, but there are drawbacks to it as well. And one of them is, like, a big issue with this is my friends, right? It is so hard for me to keep in touch with my friends and my family, and this is something that I've tried. Okay, so I'm going to try and not get upset about the fact that my camera had stopped recording and I kind of lost like maybe 5 minutes of footage. Going back to where I had left off with what had been recorded is my friends, right? So I have a lot of difficulty keeping in touch with my friends, and I won't get as deeply into it as I did before. But my point is, it's difficult for me to keep in touch with my friends, because the thing is, I don't even remember what I had said and what I hadn't said. I have friendships, right? I have close friends who I might go sometimes like months or even years without talking to. Like, these are some of my best friends, and I will just stop messaging them. I'll just not talk to them. Not because I don't want to talk to them, but because if we're like physically separated, it's just difficult for me to kind of keep up that communication, right? And like I said, I want to talk to them, right? These are some of the people I'm closest to, but it's just difficult for me because it's not in the present moment, right? Like, because it's not something that I'm seeing, that's something that I'm aware of in each moment, right? It's something that is outside of that, right? And this is difficult for me because, like I mentioned before, this just isn't an excuse, right? Like, yes, okay, I might be very present-minded, and I might be very kind of averse to having anything that takes me out of that. But that doesn't change the fact that the way what my actions reflect, right? Like, the people around me, I might feel like, I'm so upset. Okay, so my friends what they see from their perspective is just that I slowly stop keeping in touch with them, and then I just ghost them, right? I just don't communicate with them anymore. And from their point of view, that they must feel like I no longer want that friendship, like I no longer care about maintaining that relationship, right? And the thing is, that's not true, right? Because within myself, I know that I feel that way, right? I know that these are some of my closest friends, right? I know that these are people who I care about and that I want to keep in touch with, right? But that doesn't change the fact that my actions do not speak that. My actions are exactly what they feel, which is that I'm essentially ghosting people, right? I'm ghosting some of my friends, I'm ghosting my family, right? All of these people. And so it doesn't matter what the reason is. The result is the same, and that's what's important, right? And so what I had realized, and kind of by like talking this all out, which I will not do again, and I'm trying to move on from that frustration of having the camera stop, but essentially, this is why this conversation from yesterday hit different, right? This is why I was suddenly able to realize things differently, or to notice things differently, because what I realized is I've spent so much time trying to figure out why. Why is this something that's so hard for me, right? Because I've spent this whole time talking about, how I'm very present-minded, and my mind is very like one-track focused, very kind of like simple, and that's what this video is about. But really, it's not what this video is about. What this video is about is why I have so much trouble keeping in touch with my friends. Why do I have so much difficulty just keeping those channels of communication open, right? How do I keep those friendships? Why is it so hard for me? Why is it that I can see people who seemingly without effort are able to maintain like 100 friendships, right? How are there people? Because I feel like I'm such a social extroverted person. There's nothing I love more than forming relationships with people and interacting with people. It is the best of life, in my opinion. But it's so difficult for me to maintain them. It's so difficult for me to maintain those relationships. So how do I see people who do it so naturally, and I'm just so amazed. And I always wonder, why is it so difficult for me? And I think I've finally realized, or started to begin to realize, why. And it's because I never viewed that as being connected, right? I always knew that I was kind of this person, right, where I'm very in the moment, very present, and I don't really like things taking me out of that. It gets frustrating, it gets kind of overwhelming, right? It's tedious. I never made the connection that also influences how I keep in touch, or the lack thereof, right? And so, wait, hold on, still recording? Nice. I never made that connection. And now the additional part is that I realized in other places in my life, right? Because I mentioned before, right? Like, let's say I have a deadline coming up, or I have certain goals that I want to meet, right? Maybe I have something like a budget, like I have finances to worry about, right? Those are things that will take up a lot of real estate in my head in a moment-to-moment basis, right? Like, if I'm struggling with money, which I'm fortunate to not be right now, but if in the past, when I was like really like looking at money, that was stressing me out in every moment, right? And that's the exact kind of thing that overwhelms me. So what do I do? What do I do with all those things, all those problems that if I just ignore, I know shit will get bad, right? What do I do, given that this is how I am? I add structure, and this is very important. I add structure. So let's say that I know if I don't do if I'm just like living my life moment to moment, I will like, I'll forget things. I will forget the fact that back when I was in college, I would forget that I might have a class coming up. I would forget that I have a deadline, I have a project, I have a test, right? All these things, I have something due. I would just forget all that, right? I can't do that because if I just forget all that and I ignore it, I fail, right? So what do? I add structure. I give myself a schedule. I take time in a previous moment to plan things out such that I know that I can continue. Like, let's say I plan out a week. That means I can continue that week without worrying. I can continue that week ignoring everything because I know that as long as I just follow what I have, everything that needs to get done will get done, right? This for me is game changing, right? Because that means that now I can live the way I do, which is not wanting to, like, not worrying about things, right? Being maybe a little too careless and a little too not worrying, right? But I can do that while still getting things done because I have the structure that I can trust in, right? I don't have to use up any of my RAM. It's already been like preordained, right? Like it's already been decided, right? That makes it so much easier. I do that with other things, right? Let's say if I don't, this has reached the point where now if I don't have structure in certain things, I will start to feel stressed purely by the lack of structure, right? If I don't have a budget, I'm worried in every moment about the money that I'm spending, the money that I might not be saving, right? But if I have a budget, I can live without worrying about any of my finances because I know it's taken care of, right? And I can just, as many of those switches as I can turn off by preemptively planning things, the better. That's what I've realized is the only way that I can grow and be sustainable and like do things correctly while still living in this way where I'm very in the moment and I'm very much not worried about things, right? I need the structure. The structure gives me a sense of comfort because I know that things are getting taken care of, right? I know that that I have something that I can fall back on, something that I can just trust in, that will make sure that everything is handled so that I don't have to be worrying about that in each step, right? Because I just can't be so in my head like that, right? And that's what's overwhelming for me. That's what's difficult for me. If I have a plan, I can follow it. That's just fine, right? And so now I've been able to, what I've realized is that same kind of philosophy, that same mentality can be applied to this as well, right? And it's strange because it seems kind of weird, but I think that same structure needs to be applied to how I keep in touch with my friends, right? Because that's just like, it's difficult for me. The way I said it, which might not, I think it gets the point across, even though it might not be super accurate, is that if I'm not near my friends, I'll just kind of forget they exist, right? Like I don't stop caring about them, right? But they'll just kind of like sometimes I will just happen to be going through my messages and I'll see a friend and I'll be like, oh my God, right? Like this person, I forgot. Like and it's kind of fucked up, but it's like, I'll be like, I forgot about this person's existence, right? And now that I've remembered them, I have like all this love and care for them and I want to message them and catch up and know what's going on in their life, right? And I just want so badly to reforge that connection, and I will. But something else happens, I'm sucked out of that moment into another moment, right? And then I just kind of continue on with that. I will forget. I won't remember unless I get maybe like a notification or something like that. And then I'm like, oh shit, this person exists again, right? My life is like a series of moments like that. And so what I have to do to prevent that from being the case, right, in terms of outcome, is adding structure to that as well. So again, still recording nice. Adding structure to that as well. And so that can mean all kinds of things, but the way I'm thinking about it is and this is something that I'm going to try doing very soon with certain methods that I might touch on a little later. But I essentially want to keep track of all the people that I want to keep in touch with, and basically just provide myself with reminders in a sense, like give myself a plan, like a schedule for keeping in touch with people. It seems very cold. It seems very rigid and a little strange and inorganic, but I think it might, at least for me, be life-changing, right? Because if I can find a way, keeping up with people is stressful for me, right? especially like family and, and some friends and things like that. It's just, I want so badly to keep up with them. I don't know if this is something that I said in this current recording, or if in the part that was lost, but essentially, like, my some of interacting with people is like the best of life for me, right? There's nothing that I love more than talking with people and making connections and kind of forging friendships and just interacting with people and having experiences with people, right? Like that's all, like, that is what I love most, right? If you could condense everything that I do in my life, it is probably towards that purpose. That is what I love most, and that's why I'm so in the moment, because when I'm with another person, they are all that exists in my entire universe, right? That they are the only thing that I'm focused on, right? Nothing else matters to me, nothing else exists, because that's just the most important thing to me, right? And so it makes it suck real bad when that's the case for me, yet I can't maintain any friendships. I can't maintain my relationships with anyone because it's just difficult for me to keep in touch, because I just don't operate that way, right? And so even though this might seem inorganic and kind of cold and weird and maybe a little calculating and just strange, I think that providing that structure for myself of like, hey, you haven't talked to this person in 3 weeks, you should send them a message, right? Like putting reminders on my phone for like everyone's birthdays, or like checkups every month like to make sure that I've talked to people, giving myself just a list of friends that I have so that I don't forget their existence, right? Like that might sound kind of fucked up, but it's the truth. And I need to recognize, and I need to recognize that, because even though I might not want to say it, like the fact that I just forget some of my friends exist, it's true. And if I don't want them to feel that way, if I don't want them to feel like I don't care about these friendships, which I really do genuinely care about, right? Then I have to take actions that will push that forward. I have to take actions that will speak that, because that's really what matters. It doesn't matter how I feel if nobody else around me feels that way, if nobody else around me is able to read that, right? And so I don't think that who I am or how my mind operates, in a sense, I don't think that's an excuse. I don't think that just because I kind of live carefree that my responsibilities don't exist, right? Just because I'm able to go day by day ignoring all my problems and not really thinking about anything and just enjoying the moment, right? That doesn't mean that that's all there is, because the reality is that there exists more than that, right? You have relationships with people, you have responsibilities, you have things, you have your own personal growth, right? All these things that matter that still need to get taken care of. And so what do you do if you're that kind of person, but all of this stuff ends up getting pushed to the side? Structure. And I guess that's really what I want to talk about, like what I wanted to touch on in this video, which is, if you are a similar person to me, right? And that could mean in anything, right? Like if you just have difficulty with deadlines, or if you have difficulty with remembering people's birthdays, or if you have difficulty with just keeping in touch with friends, anything like that. If you have difficulty getting your responsibilities, difficulty with your finances, right? I know that's a common one. If you have difficulty, God, if you forget everything, right? Like that's me. I have so much in my head. Never mind. Even the tiniest amounts of things in my head can feel like so much, right? And so the biggest thing for me has been to prevent me from feeling just god awfully overwhelmed all the time is writing things down. And this is why, like, I'm gonna make sure I'm still recording again. Yeah, this is why I talk a lot about journaling, right? Like literally every video I have is a journal entry that I've written, right? And there's many more that I don't make videos on. And then these are just all the videos I've made are just on the journal entries that I've written on paper, right? Like the pages I've written on paper. Every night I also journal like on Evernote, right? And then I will use both Evernote and the Apple Notes app to just jot down like all the random shit that comes to my head throughout the day, right? And then I also use iPhone reminders and stuff like that, because I just forget everything, right? And I know that. And so whenever there's an idea in my head, if I don't write it down, I'm super stressed, because I essentially am going on a loop. Like if I have something that I don't want to forget, I have to repeat it in my head, like nonstop, right? Like let's say I have to buy toilet paper, right? that's something that I had to do like earlier today. I'm after I record this video, I'm actually going to go buy some toothpaste, right? If I didn't put that down on a note, I would have to be like in my head repeating as I'm talking to the camera. I'd just be like toilet paper, toothpaste, right? Because if not, it will just leave my brain. I will just forget. And so if you're a person who's like even like that, where you just forget everything, structure. I write everything down. This has been a habit that I've had to build over time, but it's been so worth it. Like, everything needs to get written down if you're that kind of person, right? Maybe you're not. Maybe these are not issues that you have to deal with. Cool, right? You probably have other things. There's another trade-off there, right? But if you're a person who very present-minded, you don't like having a lot of things in your head, you just can't think of all that much at the same time, right? You can't multitask and stuff like that. Adding structure is your friend, right? Because you are so kind of, I guess maybe like organically, like you are so capable of unstructured. I don't know, words are difficult. You are so capable of being in the moment and just living like that, that if you don't have structure, you will just kind of meander, I guess. Or at least that's what I notice with myself, right? Where I will just kind of begin to meander throughout life and not really, and ignore things and not take care of my responsibilities and stuff, because in the moment, those aren't the things that you're really worried about, right? Then what that just leads to is a compounding sense of overwhelming ambient stress. The only way to resolve that, the only way to really take care of that, is by providing yourself structure. Take time to plan things out so that you can trust in those systems and in that structure, so that then you never have to worry about anything, right? Because you're not going to worry about anything either way. But then one of those leads to like impending doom, and the other one leads to you in an almost carefree way still getting everything done, right? And so if that's just like the one thing I can push, I think that structure is so important. And if you're a person who's kind of like me and you have to deal with and you deal with some of the same issues that I do, I think that taking a look at structure and how you can add some structure to your life will be like massive. It'll be a game changer. So yeah, I'm also making this video for myself because I realized that I need to add structure in yet another thing, right? Something that I hadn't even begun to think about the applications of structure in. So I'm excited because if this is something that works, right? If this is something that I can really succeed in doing, it will solve so many of my problems. Because like I mentioned before, it's just my friendships, like having friends, having people who I can talk with and interact with, and those connections, those between two people, those are just like my favorite things in life. And I'm really stabbing myself in the back. That doesn't work. I'm shooting myself in my own foot if I'm not learning how to maintain those, right? And if I'm not really putting effort into the maintenance of those relationships. But yeah, so that's all I've got. This is a long video like all the other ones, but hopefully, you've enjoyed. Hopefully this is something that maybe you were able to find some value from. And yeah, that's it.